Quarterback Landon Duckworth visited over the weekend and just got predicted to South Carolina, but the sky's not falling.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I am Lindsay Crosby, filling in for Zach Blackerby. He had a last-minute thing come up. He'll be back tomorrow. Joined, as we do every Tuesday, by the one and only message board legend, Charlie 5 of the Barn Auburn and a bunch of other places. And I want to get to the sports year for Auburn in general. I want to get to the wide receiver room. There's a lot of talent here, a lot of reason to be excited, some recent accolades they got. But first, we got the report early on Monday. I think it was Steve Wiltfong of On 3, a prediction for four-star quarterback Landon Duckworth, the number 6 quarterback in this upcoming recruiting class, who visited over the weekend.
Yeah.
Predicted to go to South Carolina. And I've seen a couple people on Auburn Twitter saying the sky is falling, the losses are starting to manifest in the inability to get recruits. And I want everybody, in the words of Aaron Rodgers, relax.
Yeah, for sure. I said last week, Zach and I talked, we were talking about the visits upcoming. Mm-hmm. And he asked specifically about Landon Duckworth. And I said that I felt like the Travis Burgess situation was a sign of where Auburn kind of was as far as quarterbacks go for the 2026 class. Look, it's going to be a weird year for quarterbacks this year for Auburn, just because it's going to be tough to get a quarterback. It's going to be tough to get a guy to come sit behind Deuce and sit behind Jackson. I've always thought, honestly, maybe you just need to get a filler guy this year and then really recruit that 2027 quarterback. I just thought maybe Travis Burgess or Landon Duckworth could maybe be that filler guy, but it seems like they're actually going to command, as they should, a very high price tag. So once it was an NIL situation with Travis, I felt like Landon was probably going to command even more. So I wasn't really I was glad he came to visit, but I wasn't super high that Auburn was going to be able to make a lot of headway, and it manifested itself this I guess yesterday with the prediction to South Carolina, who's been a consistent. They've been consistent with his recruitment all along. So there's a lot of different directions Auburn could go as far as recruitment of quarterbacks, and I mean, we could talk about a 1,000 different angles they could go. Nothing's ever really done now, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing to remember. Just nothing's ever finished now. We'd love to have it done and over with, but nothing – the book is not closed right now. Like, there's still some things that have got to play out that could change the direction of which way Auburn goes as far as quarterback this year.
And there's a couple things you touched on in there that I want to kind of unpack a little bit before we peek ahead to 27. I think the first one is, you mentioned the NIL being a legitimate number for some of these quarterbacks that we've seen in this class. And I think that there's a tacit understanding we all have that Jackson Arnold is receiving a good amount of money. Deuce Knight's receiving a good amount of money. And it's the financial side of me almost thinks it'd be irresponsible to pay for a third guy in the room when you can only play one at a time. So I do like the idea of you go get a developmental option, a guy who's going to be cheaper. If he works out, then, and you need to play him and he's good, then great. If he moves on, it's not a harm because you weren't counting on him, but that allows you to reprioritize money to other places. We look at this wide receiver group. I can't imagine this was the cheapest group to assemble either. So like it does a little bit for you there. But I think your biggest point was you got to convince a guy to sit behind two players. And at a certain point in time, it really doesn't matter how much you're paying. If they want to play, then they're not
dumb.
Yeah, they're not dumb. Like, they understand that, like, hey, the money's great, but like, if I sit behind these dudes for 3 seasons and just collect these paychecks, I don't have a shot of playing at the next level. And I guarantee you, most highly recruited quarterbacks in the class think like they do this thinking about, what's going to help me get to the NFL. Yes, the money's good. Yes, the fame that comes with a power 4 quarterback is nice, but I want to get to the league. I want to play on Sundays, and that does play into this as well.
Yeah, I mean, the best case scenario is for a quarterback is at Auburn right now is you got 2 years at best, 3 years at worst. I mean, if the only chance you have to really come sit 1 year and play the next is if, let's just say, Jackson does really good this year and he comes back and then Deuce leaves. So then the freshman comes in and then maybe you only have 1 year to sit. Like it's just really tough right now to want to come sit for multiple years. And I think you're going to see that kind of be a trend. I think kids, they're going to have to space things out the way that they recruit high school quarterbacks. But again, let's just say here's a scenario. Let's say you get to December or late November, and it looks like that Jackson's going to be coming back for the next season, and Deuce announces he's going to go into the portal. Well, that opens up a lot of different directions that you can make up a lot of ground in a very short amount of time.
And you've laid the groundwork with kids like Landon Duckworth by bringing them in for visits, even though you don't expect to sign them.
Yeah, exactly. So again, you can't gripe. You don't really know. Like, we don't know if this is a bad thing yet. Like it could just be that you're just having to be patient. And I think this year is all about patience. It's about patience. And then let's see what the best scenario is as it presents itself. And towards the end of the season, that a scenario could open up in the middle of the season, beginning of the season, into the summer. I just think we got to be patient and not think the skies are falling. I don't even really think it's so much of got to see results on the field. I don't really think this is that much to do with that. I think it's just simply Auburn's need for a quarterback is not as big as what some of these guys we're targeting are asking for. So I think it's that simple.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you touched on too is this does have ramifications down the line, because it feels like, given the roster dynamics is what I'm going to call them, the eligibility of Arnold, of Knight, 2027 feels a lot bigger towards that's when you need to start trying to get the next dude in the room to be ready for when Deuce is done.
And it just so happens that the state of Alabama has 3 really, really good quarterbacks in that 2027 class. You got Gunnar Rivers, who I think he just visited Texas this past weekend, the son of Phillip Rivers. I saw a funny tweet. Did you see?
I was about to say, get ready for that. It's going to be like the Fast and Furious franchise. You're going to have a Rivers kid every 2 years for like a decade, because
he's got a pile of kids. This is crazy. It's crazy.
That guy had everything's working. I'll put it that way for Phillip Rivers.
So you got Gunnar Rivers. You have obviously the legend Trent Seaborn, who has been winning state championships since he was walking, since he was 13, coming out of the womb.
The GOAT.
And then Kason Myers, who is he was at Pike Road, had a really good season last year. He's transferred to Auburn High this year, so he's going to be an Auburn High quarterback. Auburn loves him, so there's going to be there's options for that 2027 guy. And if you sort of take a flyer this year, you got to go get you a dog in 2027. And I think there's some really good ones that they've sort of circled a bit to pay attention to in that 2027 class. So that could also be something that's playing in to all this. So quarterback, there is nothing. I guess there's no real blueprint for how to execute this whole NIL portal era. I mean, it's just kind of fly by the seat of your pants and just hope that you end up with a decent room like Auburn kind of backed into this upcoming season. It ends up being one of the better quarterback rooms that they maybe have had in quite some time.
I was going to say, the Ashton Daniels ad he fills the role of what that third guy would do, at least in this season, where he gives you another experienced option if you'll need it. You'll
never have another kid like that. Like, Auburn will never get another kid like that that's okay with not being the starter, but is in that
coming in with the understanding. My job is not to take the starting job away from anybody. My job is I'm an insurance policy. I'm going to get a second degree, and then I'm going to probably either go into coaching or move on to something else. Go professional in something other than sports.
Exactly.
All right. In just a second, I want to get to this wide receiver room, because there's a lot of accolades, and I think this can be one of the best that Auburn's ever had. We'll do that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. If you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, like it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. It becomes your personal CFO, giving your program full visibility and control over its finances. Because Monarch Money doesn't just do like budgeting, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your NIL deals. You can track whatever your payroll is going to be once they finally finalize this settlement, all of these things. So you can stop just managing your money and start building your program to the point where it can compete for championships consistently.
Love it.
So take control of your personal finances, just like the program's doing with their finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Thank you for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Lindsay Crosby, Kyle Rush, together filling in for Zach Blackerby. It takes two of us to equal one of him. He will be back tomorrow. And this wide receiver room, like, okay, we thought last year, Keandre Lambert-Smith, and then these exceptional freshmen, your Cam Coleman, your Malcolm Simmons, all these guys, we thought that was a really good wide receiver room. But going to what you have this year, where you bring in an Eric Singleton, you have Horatio Fields in there, you bring in a Sam Turner, you bring in, Eric Smith, Duke Smith, and then combine that with your Bryce Kane, your Perry Thompson, your Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons. It feels like this could be one of the best wide receiver rooms in program history. And you had something recently over on Top Button Pod on the Bar in Auburn about just where this room ranks in college football in the SEC right now.
Yeah, PFF released their rankings, and I think Auburn was the number 2 wide receiver room in the country, and the number 1 overall receiver room in the SEC. And the biggest thing to me that makes that stand out is it's easy to jump on a hype train when you have success, to view, like Ohio State. Like it's not that hard. It's not that much of a step out. Even Alabama, I think Alabama was number 5. Ole Miss, they throw for thousands and thousands of yards. It's not that hard, not that big of a step out to say that those guys are going to be, some of the best wide receivers in the country. I feel like when you're talking about an Auburn team that was 5-7 last year, they put up some numbers, but stalled out a lot on offense. To have them ranked that high, that there's no real motivation to do that. There's really nothing other than they just believe that Auburn has 2 of the top 10 returning wide receivers in the country, and Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman. And then when you couple all that together with the cast of characters you just mentioned, they've got a really salty room. And I tried to go. Auburn's had some really good duos, in time. Like you can just go down the list. I mean, even if you want to go with like Darius Slayton and Ryan, Ryan, is it? Gosh, I forgot his name right off the bat. Dadgummit. He was
Ryan
really
Williams?
good. Was it? I don't think it was William. I can't think of his name, but regardless, you got those. You got Duke Williams. You got Sammy Coates. You got Anthony Schwartz and Seth Williams. Like you got all these duos. But as far as a room goes, I think you got to go all the way back to 2004 to find a top to bottom room that can really compete with what Auburn could put on the field this year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I like about this room is I feel like you have some of everything. So you have the physical monsters that, Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, right? These guys are massive. They're strong. They're fast. They're everything that you want. You have the smaller statue burner kind of guys, your Malcolm Simmons, your Bryce Kane. You have proven veterans who have done it, Eric Singleton, Horatio Fields to a lesser extent. And then some of these guys are in multiple categories. Cam Coleman did it a lot last year. Like Bus has the physicality. The one thing that I find interesting, and I want to get your opinion on this, I'm kind of surprising you with this here, is the PFF write-up grouped in the Purdue transfer Max Clare at tight end for Ohio State in their group. Like Jeremiah Smith, we know he's fantastic.
Right.
But they grouped him in there as well. If Auburn were to either bring back their number 1 tight end from last year or get some other really good tight end in the portal, or if they had done it, do you think that would have pushed Auburn to the number 1 receiving core in the game?
I don't. I think you just Ohio State's those guys are just too good. They're just
Ohio
they're just
State,
too good. Yeah, it's Ohio State. They're going to be number one. I was asked this question too. Like, is that a concern? I mean, if you look at Rivaldo's production from last year, he played virtually every snap, and he was a big time receiving threat. And Auburn doesn't really have that player on the roster, but I just don't think that's a huge deal because of all of the different options you have at wide receiver this year. Could you line up Perry Thompson as a big slot, Horatio Fields as a big slot? Like, you got a lot of different options to throw out there at defenses to get mismatches. I just don't know that Auburn's going to have to rely. Remember, like 2 years ago, Rivaldo was the leading wide receiver because we just didn't even have a wide receiver that could really go out and make plays. And you saw his production drop last year as the receivers got better. Keandre Lambert-Smith, Cam Coleman. And I think the need for that type of player I think it's diminished a little bit. And I think we're going to have some really explosive guys.
Listen, the disrespect on Jair Shorter, I will not stand for it.
I thought he was going to be
we all thought he was.
I had myself talked into he was going to be the biggest deep threat.
That one catch, I think it was in spring practice, right? That one catch in spring practice got all of us. Here's the thing about Raldo Farweather's role. Like, last year, if I pulled up the season correctly, he only had 167 snaps as an inline tight end.
Right.
The majority of what he was doing was in the slot. Yeah, like he was filling that big tight end, like that big slot role that Gus Malzahn had that role. But to your point, Perry Thompson's a great fit for that role. You have guys who can replicate that. The only way where you have a little bit of concern is when you bring in somebody else as that inline blocker on, this was 1/4 of the snaps. Do you then telegraph a little bit more than what you're doing? Because nobody expects you to send Brandon Frazier out there and then send him deep on a route. Like, you may do it once or twice to put it on film, but does that telegraph things a little bit? I think the talent's too good where it doesn't really matter.
Well, I just think it's going to be a more traditional tight end. So when you see a tight end go into the game, it's going to be probably more of a detached guy that's probably an extra run blocker. So maybe it's more of a run heavy set, but I think it's going to be just a more traditional tight end. Those guys can still go out for passes. They can still go out for, run little play actions, hit them in the flat, that type of stuff. So I don't think bringing a tight end out is necessarily going to say we're throwing it and putting it in is necessarily we're going to pass it. I think there's packages for each to make it, to utilize those guys.
Yeah. I'm trying to find that in PFF where you can go and you can look and see, oh yeah, this is how many guys, like Auburn had, like how many times they went 2 tight ends and things like that. I can't seem to find it at the moment, but it was a bunch
because I'll tell you why. I know Luke Deal had about 60% of the snaps that Rivaldo did. So if that's the case, they were on the field at the same time quite a bit, like at least almost half the time. If you look at Luke Deal's snaps, they were close to 50% or a little bit over.
He had 172 rush blocking snaps and 287 overall. So there you go. Yeah, that's exactly to your point. That's something where we'll see one tight end and a big slot receiver versus seeing Rivaldo and a tight end in the game. So functionally, it's the same. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense to me there. Okay. So that's. I wonder if you had Micah Riley-Ducker, are we number one? We're obviously not number one. You lost Micah Riley-Ducker.
I think about that decision he made all the time, and I can't really fathom how it made sense. That's one of the, you can always kind of talk yourself into the reason behind why a kid left, and like unless there was just a issue with the coaching staff or like
it had to be something off of the field.
Yeah. It had to be something off the field because he was Raldo Farweather. Like he could do both. Like he could receive, he could be the blocking guy. It was a natural like a natural step in and go. So that never really made sense for me. Obviously I wish him the best and hope he does well. I guess he's at Texas A&M. So he obviously went to a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens there. All right, in just a second, I want to talk about the season, the sports season, the athletic season that was for Auburn, because we're not done yet. Auburn baseball has a super regional this weekend, but we saw a lot of really high highs with the athletics department. I want to get into that and talk about who needs to step up. We'll do that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Final segment of Locked On Auburn. Lindsay Crosby, Charlie 5, filling in for Zach Blackerby. Again, he will be back tomorrow, so please be nice to us in the comments down below. We're not getting rid of Zach permanently. But I want to talk about the sports season that was, because we see sometimes where they talk about, I forget what they call it now. It's like the Director's Cup or something, and it's the overall SEC standings for all of the different sports. And Auburn's had a pretty good athletic year with a couple of notable exceptions, right? Obviously, football is the number one that, like, hey, football has to be better. And I think we've covered that ad nauseum on this show, on your show, in the Barn Auburn message board. We've talked about that a ton. But there are quite a few sports that had fantastic years. Like, obviously, my thing I'd go point to would be baseball. You would probably point to men's golf right there. Obviously, basketball beating the Final Four. Which program in the athletics department do you think best exceeded expectations this year? Because I do think that criteria probably takes basketball out of the conversation as far as who exceeded expectations the most this year.
I mean, it would have to be baseball, right? I mean, it would have to be, because, I mean, you had the season last year where it seemed like nothing could go right. And then they rebound, and now you're going to, I mean, you got a chance to play for, you're basically in the Sweet 16 of baseball.
Yep.
You got a chance to go to Omaha. So I'm just here's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of the fact that the people that actually matter in regards to baseball understand how important Butch Thompson is, and like everything that he's done for the program and how he's elevated it to. Hell, he's the, I mean, he has an argument for the best baseball coach of all time at Auburn. I mean, the four super regionals, that's never been done at Auburn, hosting the first super regional. I understand that's not necessarily been, that's only been what, 25 years where you had
roughly
super regionals, but golf, you're coming off of a national championship. So you brought a bunch of the guys back. So you expected those guys to do really well. And they did. They got all the way to the match play, which is essentially the Elite Eight, which is fantastic. Basketball, you probably should have gone deeper last year had you not had the ejection in the first round. So like those guys had a lot to prove. Baseball has been a bright spot. I mean, as far as a bounce back year, and like to have it all hitting all at the same time has been really awesome. Nice. And if you're just like, man, if you could just get football right, you have a chance to have. I think you got a better baseball coach and a better basketball coach than you did back in that run in the 80s, like that 85 to 1990, that little run. If you could just get football on track, you could have one of the more dominant, one of the more, successful athletic departments in the country.
Yeah. So coming into this season, and I want to stick on baseball for a second because that's what I know the best right here, right?
Sure.
Butch Thompson was third all-time in winning percentage in the program at 570. Paul Nix was at 578. He was 63 to 84. And then Hal Baird was at 659 winning percentage, 85 through 2000. And all three of these guys have taken two teams to Omaha. Like that's kind of the big thing for all three of these coaches. They've all taken two teams to Omaha. And so Hal Baird's considered the standard bearer because he's won, 120 something more games than anybody else has. I do think that Butch Thompson right now, winning percentage wise, already has, but probably moves past Paul Nix for at least the second best. And he would argue second best. He would say he's not the best. But if they make another trip to Omaha, especially if they make a run in Omaha, which is a thing that, last time he took them, they won a game in Omaha. They went 1-2, and I think they lost to the eventual runner-up. So you're probably pretty close there. I would argue underperforming programs, football's probably not the most disappointing, simply because I don't think the expectations were as high outside of Auburn as they actually were. But I kind of have to wonder, like, is it football? Is it gymnastics? I don't know enough about gymnastics to know. I just know that if you had an Olympian there and then, and then all of a sudden you don't, and you're not competing for the championship, it feels like you probably underperformed. I don't actually know. If you follow all Auburn sports and let us know in the comments who you think is the biggest over and under performer of the sports season. But if football's
got to step it up. Football's got to step it up.
Yeah.
And again, I talked about this on with Ben Taylor on his radio show this morning. When you look at the coaches at Auburn currently, in this day and time, I don't think there's 3 better coaches as far as understanding Auburn and being good fits for Auburn right now. If you could just get football going, if Hugh could just do what we feel like he can do with the roster he's built, you just have so much momentum, man. And then it's how much longer, will Bruce go? If we can get, 4 or 5 more years out of Bruce, keep Butch Thompson happy, and then, start getting to where we're in the conversation for the playoffs out of football. Boy, man, you talk about an epic run.
A golden age of Auburn sports.
We were looking at that. If you were a freshman in that 1985, if you're a freshman in college in 1985 in Auburn,
1-year-old,
you experienced some incredible sports. Like you experienced, I think 2 NCAA baseball tournament appearances when it was only 32 teams, so it was harder to get into. You experienced a Sweet 16 and Elite 8. And then 4 tournament appearances, though. And then you got 3, a solo SEC championship and 2 shared SEC championships in football. Like, I think they have the pieces in place to maybe do something similar if you can get football on track. I think you can have a similar sort of run as a student. And hopefully you can turn that corner this year and maybe go on a little bit of run with football too.
Yeah, I think that would just be tons of fun. I would really enjoy getting to just for Auburn to be that dominant in all 3 major sports at the same time. And then obviously whatever else you get from the other sports, your equestrian program's always been a juggernaut.
Yeah.
Although I think they've taken a small step back, but they've always been really good. Whatever else you can get from everybody else, gymnastics, whatever it might be. Soccer, I've heard, is okay. I don't know.
Softball made it back made it back to the tournament. So you got a lot of good stuff going.
Yeah. Great time to be an Auburn fan. And it's just,
and you got Nike coming, which is going to make everybody better.
You've got Nike coming. So we're going to get a lot better merch, like a lot better gear to go with it. And obviously
July, baby,
the support that comes with Nike. This is the last College World Series or the last baseball postseason appearance you'll see in Under Armour. So kind of hyped to see what Nike does with the baseball uniforms. I feel like that's really where they've been willing of the major sports. That's really where they've been willing to do other stuff. I'm still holding out for some baby blues, but like we've seen them do the solid orange, the solid blue, the pinstripes, the grays, lots of different options.
Our feet won't fall off anymore, which is always a problem.
It's funny. Ike Irish on Saturday's game, Saturday against Stetson, he had 2 or 3 notable times where he slipped and fell. And I was talking to his mom on Sunday before the regional finale. And I said, was he wearing different cleats? And she said, yeah, he actually got new cleats for this tournament or for this weekend. He's not wearing them on Sunday. And I said, good.
Yes.
Under Armour cleats are trash.
Always have been.
Exactly.
It's so funny. It's always been a point of contention for baseball. Baseball got the short end of the stick, I feel like. And
they really did. You know what? Maybe that's the only thing that's been holding them back from a championship is Under Armour cleats.
I wish our contract ran out by the time they were in Omaha. That'd be pretty dope.
I will
roll out.
It's like, hey, we have another week or 2 on this, but Nike's like, we're gonna go ahead and slip you guys some shoes.
What's Under
Armour? What's our we'll buy out 2 weeks. What are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Charlie Five, where can folks go to get more of you and all your fantastic Auburn content?
Absolutely. Just subscribe to the Barn Auburn YouTube page or thebarnauburn.com. You can take $25 off your annual membership and join in the conversation, join in the fun. Y'all's baseball coverage is fantastic. The live shows were electric. The WWE intro for the final game was electric.
The promo from the deck, that was tons of fun.
Yes, that was so awesome. From the deck too. Like you can't touch that. So a lot of fun stuff going on at the Barn Auburn.
And we've got at least one more weekend of fun stuff going on with baseball this weekend. Hopefully it'll extend to Omaha. We're working on those plans. But in the meantime, do us a favor. If you're listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when this episode drops tomorrow. Until next time, this has been Locked on Auburn.